What happens if the United States, as we know it, falls apart? It's a question more Americans are asking in 2025, and the answer might shock you. Some states aren't just complaining about Washington. They're laying the groundwork to go their own way. From state sovereignty bills to talk of border control, military independence, and even new currencies, the whispers of secession are growing louder. Recent polls show that 1 in 5 Americans support their state leaving the Union. And some leaders aren't ruling it out either. If the country collapses economically or politically, these 10 states could be the first to break away. This isn't just theory. Movements are forming, laws are shifting, and history is repeating itself. So today, we're counting down the top 10 U.S. states that could break away from the Union, if America collapses. Buckle up, your state might be on the list. Number 10, Alaska. Alaska has always felt like its own country, and it might be the best prepared to actually become one. Known as the last frontier, Alaska was once part of Russia and still maintains cultural and economic independence unlike any other state. Its location, far from the continental U.S., gives it both isolation and autonomy. Economically, Alaska could sustain itself through oil, natural gas, fishing, and tourism. In fact, the state owns and manages over 100 million acres of land, much of it rich in resources. The Alaska Permanent Fund, valued at over $75 billion, provides annual dividend checks to residents, reinforcing a sense of financial sovereignty. There's also political precedent. The Alaskan Independence Party, once the third largest in the state, has openly advocated for a vote on secession. And while federal law bars secession, it hasn't stopped local leaders from raising the issue in response to federal overreach. Alaska's strategic location gives it access to Arctic shipping routes and military value, making it more globally relevant than most realize. If the U.S. splintered, Alaska might not just survive, it might thrive. It's remote, it's resource-rich, and it's already operating with a level of independence. If any state is built to go it alone, Alaska is at the top of the list. Number 9, Texas. If there's one state that never really forgot it used to be its own country, it's Texas. The Republic of Texas existed from 1836 to 1845, and that independent spirit never left. Texas lawmakers have repeatedly introduced bills to explore Texit, a full break from the United States. In 2021 and again in 2023, the Texas Independence Referendum Act was introduced in the state legislature, calling for a vote on secession. The idea has gained support among voters frustrated with federal mandates, border policy, and economic interference. A 2024 YouGov poll found that 31% of Texans support secession. Economically, Texas could hold its own. It's the 9th largest economy in the world by GDP when measured alone, ahead of entire countries like Canada and South Korea. It leads the U.S. in energy production, tech investment, and exports, with a strong presence in oil, agriculture, and defense. Culturally and politically, Texas is distinct. With its own power grid, border control debates, and a fierce sense of identity, it already functions semi-independently. Critics say federal overreach is pushing Texas closer to a real break. If the U.S. crumbled, don't be surprised if Texas raises its Lone Star flag once more, and this time keeps it waving. Number 8, California. On the opposite coast, and often the opposite side of the political spectrum, is California. The Calexit movement, which gained attention in 2016 and again in 2024, argues that California is simply too big and too different to remain tied to Washington. The 5th largest economy in the world with a GDP of over $4 trillion, California already holds global influence in entertainment, tech, agriculture, and climate policy. In 2025, the Yes California Independence campaign has resumed efforts to place a secession measure on the 2026 ballot. Supporters argue that federal gridlock, environmental rollbacks, and economic misalignment are damaging the state's progress. A University of California survey found that 29% of residents support secession, a number that jumps higher among young voters. California has the ports, infrastructure, and international relationships to stand alone. It trades directly with nations like China, Japan, and Germany, and has embassies and trade offices worldwide. In many ways, California already acts like a sovereign entity. If the U.S. fragmented, California might not ask for permission. It might just walk away and take Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and a big chunk of the economy with it. Number 7, Hawaii. Hawaii may seem like paradise, But underneath the palm trees and beaches lies a simmering independence movement with deep historical roots. Once a sovereign kingdom, Hawaii was annexed by the United States in 1898, a move many native Hawaiians still view as illegitimate. The Hawaiian sovereignty movement continues to gain traction, calling for everything from federal recognition of native rights to full independence. Groups like the Nation of Hawaii and the Hawaiian Kingdom government have been lobbying internationally, asserting that U.S. governance over the islands violates international law. With an economy built on tourism, military installations, and agriculture, Hawaii's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Its GDP exceeds $100 billion, and it serves as a critical defense hub in the Pacific. But many locals argue that federal oversight benefits the mainland more than the islands themselves. In 2023, protests surged again over land rights and military expansion, reigniting sovereignty debates across the archipelago. A growing number of residents, especially younger generations, are now questioning what independence might look like. If the U.S. stumbles, don't be surprised if Hawaii sees it as a chance to reclaim its kingdom and its future. Number 6. Florida. Florida isn't just a battleground state politically. It's also a potential secession flashpoint driven by cultural clashes and economic independence. With a GDP over $1.4 trillion, Florida ranks among the world's top 20 economies if it were a country. Movements like Free Florida have emerged online and through grassroots activism, suggesting that the Sunshine State would be better off managing its own affairs. This sentiment gained steam following disputes over federal COVID mandates and immigration policies. Florida also has deep ties to Latin America and the Caribbean, making it a regional power in its own right. Its ports, finance hubs, and international influence make it uniquely positioned to chart its own course. Governor Ron DeSantis's combative stance against federal overreach has only fueled independence speculation. From education to energy policy, Florida is frequently at odds with Washington's direction. If the U.S. collapses under political or economic strain, Florida might just decide it's time to stand alone, as a nation bathed in sunshine and sovereignty. Number 5. New Hampshire. Tiny but fierce, New Hampshire has a long tradition of rebellion and independence, and it may be more serious than ever about breaking away. The state motto isn't just branding. Live free or die reflects a deep-rooted culture of self-determination. In 2022, lawmakers introduced CACR 32, a proposed constitutional amendment calling for New Hampshire's peaceful independence from the U.S. While it didn't pass, the bill shocked many by advancing through the legislative process. In 2025, the conversation hasn't died. In fact, more state representatives have signaled openness to a future referendum. New Hampshire has no state income tax or sales tax and prides itself on limited government and fiscal discipline. With high-quality healthcare, education, and a $100 billion state GDP, it's one of the most self-reliant states in the country. Culturally, many residents identify more with New England regionalism than with national trends. A 2024 Granite State poll revealed that 23% of voters support exploring secession if federal policies infringe on state autonomy. If America faltered, New Hampshire could be one of the first to say, "Thanks, but we're out." Number 4. Vermont. Vermont already operates like a country within a country, and for decades, some of its citizens have wanted to make that official. The Second Vermont Republic is one of the nation's longest-running secessionist movements, with roots stretching back to the 1800s. What makes Vermont unique is that it was its own independent republic from 1777 to 1791 before joining the Union. Today, the sentiment persists, especially among those frustrated by federal policies on healthcare, defense spending, and the environment. Economically, Vermont has a smaller GDP of about $40 billion, but it thrives on agriculture, tourism, renewable energy, and small business resilience. It also shares strong economic ties with Canada, which many in the state view as a better cultural fit. In 2025, rural activists and local lawmakers have revived calls for a serious study on independence. A recent University of Vermont poll found that 13% of residents would vote for secession, a number that spikes among younger and more progressive demographics. If America splinters, Vermont could reclaim its identity, not as a rebel state, but as a republic once again. Number 3. Oregon. Oregon's independence momentum isn't just fantasy, it's part of a growing political shift in the Pacific Northwest. From rural secession efforts to full-out regional movements, Oregon is eyeing the exit door in more ways than one. One of the most notable campaigns is the Greater Idaho Movement, which pushes for conservative rural Oregon counties to secede and join neighboring Idaho. Meanwhile, on the west side of the state, more progressive communities have entertained the idea of joining an independent Cascadia bioregion with Washington and British Columbia. With a state GDP over $300 billion, Oregon's economic base is solid, thanks to technology. Intel is its largest private employer, agriculture, and manufacturing. Trade access through Portland and Pacific ports only strengthens its strategic autonomy. In 2025, the cultural and political divide within Oregon has only deepened. Rural resentment toward urban Portland's policies fuels calls for departure, while some urban voters support a clean split from national dysfunction. If the cracks in American unity widen, Oregon could fracture in two, or leave altogether as part of a larger, greener republic. Number 2. Washington. Just north of Oregon, Washington State is also a major player in the secession conversation. As a leader in the Cascadia independence movement, it has both the cultural uniqueness and economic weight to stand on its own. With a GDP exceeding $800 billion, Washington's economy is driven by giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, and Starbucks. Add in hydropower resources, a strong agricultural base, and major ports like Seattle and Tacoma, and you have a self-sufficient state ready to thrive independently. Political divisions have grown since 2020, especially over climate policy, gun laws, and federal inaction. Secessionist ideas are gaining steam among progressives who believe Washington's values clash with those in D.C. A 2024 Northwest poll revealed that 21% of Washingtonians would support joining a Cascadian nation if the U.S. government collapsed. With a population of nearly 8 million, that's a serious movement waiting for the right moment. In a post-America world, Washington might not go it alone. It might lead a brand new country on the Pacific coast. Number 1. Puerto Rico. Though technically a U.S. territory and not a state, Puerto Rico is perhaps the most vocal region when it comes to the possibility of breaking away. And in a future where the U.S. collapses, it might just lead the charge. For decades, Puerto Ricans have debated three futures: remaining a U.S. territory, becoming a full state, or achieving full independence. In the 2020 plebiscite, over 47% voted in favor of statehood, but a strong independence movement still persists, fueled by frustration over federal neglect and colonial-style governance. Economically, Puerto Rico has struggled under crushing debt, but advocates for independence argue that without federal oversight, the island could reset its economy and trade freely with Latin America and Europe. Others point to the success of small island nations that found stability after separating from colonial powers. Culturally, Puerto Rico already feels distinct, with its own language, customs, and national identity. U.S. citizenship has not erased the feeling among many residents that they're treated as second-class participants in American democracy. If the Union were to collapse, Puerto Rico would likely see it not as a tragedy, but an opportunity. A clean break could finally fulfill a century-long question. What if Puerto Rico stood on its own? Here are 5 practical tips to consider. If you live in a U.S. state with secessionist sentiment or political instability, stay informed about local political movements. Monitor political developments and grassroots movements in your state to understand the seriousness of secession talk and how it could affect governance and daily life. Secure important documents and finances. If your state begins pushing for independence, ensure you have federal documents, access to national banks, and contingency plans for taxes, healthcare, and citizenship issues. Evaluate economic stability before relocating. States flirting with secession may face economic isolation, currency issues, or job losses. So assess economic indicators and industry health before moving or investing. Know your federal rights. Regardless of local legislation, federal rights still apply. So understanding how national laws protect you is crucial if tensions between state and federal authorities rise. Have a relocation plan ready. If your state becomes unstable due to extreme political shifts or conflict with the federal government, prepare a plan to move to a more stable region if needed. As America navigates deep political divisions, economic uncertainty, and social fragmentation, the idea of unity isn't as solid as it once was. Across red and blue states, from coastlines to heartlands, the seeds of secession are being planted, quietly but with growing force. Whether through cultural alienation, economic self-sufficiency, or sheer political will, these 10 states are positioned to break away if the federal structure collapses. Some are motivated by ideology, others by independence. But all are watching Washington closely. The question is no longer if secession talk will intensify. It's when it might turn into reality. Are we witnessing the early signs of a second American fracture? If you found this eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more geopolitical deep dives, and share this video before it becomes history. See you in the next one.